The creation of Mystic Searches began after finding illustrations I'd done as a child for a game intended for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It began as a project to see if I could I make a new game for the NES? Would anyone care? At a time when homebrews were less common, I wasn't sure the answer. I had my sights on creating a middling fantasy adventure at least on par with something like Arkista's Ring. Over 2 years, a small group of friends and I cranked on learning the ins and outs of developing for the system, having our souls crushed by its limitations and quirks, developing resources to aid us in our quest, and ultimately chronicling the new 8-bit adventure in a film we were quite proud of. In its late phases, when we were nearing completion on what we thought would be the end, we got to introduce this adventure to the great Howard Phillips, the person once responsible for greenlighting US releases. He was really supportive of what we had created.
No, totally cool stuff. Totally cool, fun stuff. Like, who wouldn't want to play a game like this, right?
We issued a few press copies of the game in that phase and got some validating responses. At that time, that game was Mystic Searches.
Mystic Searches, a brand new hardware-playable cartridge-based game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, was almost finished.
We were set to release it, but after 2 years, we learned so much and had built a suite of tools that completely redefined the approach to building NES games. My idea to create a simple NES game grew into the ambition to do something much grander with these ideas. We halted production on our almost finished Mystic Searches, added some flourishes to make it self-contained that promised something grander to come, and changed up the narrative a little bit. We released it as a prequel game that we renamed Mystic Origins. We've been happy to see many people enjoying that game, but knowing all that I had come to know, I'd never have been happy with that being the end. So that's when the real work on what is now Mystic Searches began. And here's what the game looks like today. Mystic Searches always had its roots in the sort of top-down adventure game that was so well suited for the system. However, I wanted to push the mechanics to the extent that the limited inputs would allow. So the game features 8 directional character movement. Not only does the character move in 8 directions, but he also faces in the directions to indicate that he's clearly facing that way. Like most adventure games, the player has a melee attack and a projectile attack. Unlike most top-down adventure games for the system, Mystic Searches makes significant use of a Z coordinate. The player can move in all 8 directions and can also jump. This is a variable jump like in a lot of platformers. A shadow helps orient the player and gives an indication of your height. Ordinarily, double tapping the button allows for a ground pound type of attack, which can affect the environment and many monsters. I wanted the world of this game to feel incredibly interactive, so you can slash at plants, stomp rocks, wade into shallow water, swim in deeper water, slide on ice, sink in quicksand, fall into holes, and climb up steps. As is common for games of this genre, you collect powers from the bosses that you've defeated. In Mystic Searches, these powers are the magical auras that imbue your projectile attack. Different auras cause projectile collisions with monsters or environments to have varied effects, from a simple damage attack, to stealing life, to growing organic obstacles, to causing huge explosions, to magically teleporting, to transforming a monster into a random game object, to imping a monster. But beyond the different effects that collisions can have, you can also unlock different crystals which give your projectiles varied patterns. For instance, you could use the horseshoe-shaped crystal to give your projectiles a boomerang effect. You can launch a projectile that gives you an orbital protection, or you can shoot out a trident spread beam. There are 8 different crystal types. During the game, you can mix and match your crystal type with your aura type for very diverse possibilities. Choose the crystal to set the pattern of your magic, and the aura to determine its effect when it strikes an object or monster. Another discoverable and optional type of collectible in Mystic Searches are the relics. Each relic imbues the player with a different attribute. Some relics have very direct effects on combat, such as doubling your strength or doubling your defense. Others keep you immune to certain status ailments. One of the exciting parts about the game is being able to unlock summonable characters. Narratively, the deceased characters can be brought back from the dead by completing their quest, and you can wear their aura until they've run out of health, at which time they need to be summoned again. Each of these summonable characters has unique gameplay styles, stats, and abilities. They differ in terms of strength and defense, they differ in how they're affected by status ailments, and they differ in how their mechanics operate. Each has strengths and weaknesses, and each has a personal story that ties into the overall narrative. While playing, you can combine relics and summons to make a powerhouse built for a particular area. For instance, if you're about to run through a particularly tough monster gauntlet, summon the strongest aura and arm the relic that doubles your strength. If you have to work through a particularly difficult platforming area, summon the aura with the ability to defy gravity and arm the relic that increases your speed. This opens up some personalization to the experience of the game. You'll find your favorite summon, relic, aura, crystal combination and be able to strategically traverse to new hidden areas. You can experiment to radically change the gameplay. Mystic Searches also has common disposable items that you can purchase from shops, win from completing quests, or find out in the wild. These items can heal wounds, cure ailments, create save points, discourage monsters from respawning, and several other things. These are single-use items and you can carry up to 8 at a time. However, this presents multiple ways to play through the experience. For instance, in a region where you'll be susceptible to poison, you could search out a summons that is immune to the poison, or you could unlock a relic that gives you poison immunity, or you can farm for currency to buy yourself a slate of items that can heal you if you become poisoned. Each method comes with advantages and disadvantages and helps with the non-linearity of the experience. Players are encouraged to interact with the environment and are rewarded for doing so. Hiding in the bushes, under rocks, and being hoarded by monsters are collectible commodities. You can find health power-ups, Zen, which is the currency of this fantasy world, materials used for crafting, which we'll get into in a moment, and music notes for casting game-modifying spells in the form of songs. With the protagonist of the game being a musician, his power derives from what he plucks on the strings of his supernatural lute. When you've collected enough music notes, you're able to enter into a song mode where you can play from your song list. Over the game, you learn songs and add them to this list. You can select an unlocked entry from the list, and if you successfully play the notes timed correctly, a temporary effect is engaged upon returning to the game screen, denoted by a small musical note above the player's head. Some of these effects are defensive, some offensive, and some are effects on the environment in general. Think of this as your spell system in the game. Mentioned a moment ago, you can collect materials for crafting. The materials come in 4 categories: flora, mineral, biological, and supernatural. While any type of material can be found anywhere in the game, there is higher probability of finding a certain category by performing particular actions. For instance, flora are dominantly found in plant interactions, mineral from rock interactions, and biological from defeating monsters. Supernatural materials are more rare. Materials can be sold to shop owners, used to complete quests, and are used in minigames to upgrade the player's capabilities. There are several minigames throughout the world. Some are tied directly to the narrative and the game progression. Some are optional ways to earn some Zen or rare items, and others allow the player to upgrade abilities. Rather than a traditional experience system of grinding arbitrary experience points to level up or learn new abilities, the player takes an active role in these upgrades. For instance, in the Galby Smith shop, you can make upgrades to your loot. You can make your loot stronger, you can unlock a slash rather than stab attack, you can unlock a spin move and a dash, and the ability to deflect enemy projectiles. Each loot upgrade requires that you have collected certain materials. Each material is different in terms of what exactly is needed to mold it. Successfully molding all 4 of the materials for that upgrade will successfully unlock the new melee ability. Similarly, the Alchemistress uses collected materials to help craft upgrades to your medallion, which gives you defense against status ailments and environmental effects. Each biome in the game is home to a different race, settled in service to a particular mystic. Due to the actions of the antagonists, each race is struggling in a different way. Talking to NPCs in each area will help you not only with context and giving clues on how to proceed, it'll also unlock lore points. So engaging with these NPCs and learning the lore has a gamic function rather than just a narrative one. The more lore points you collect in a region, the greater the benefits you might have in that region. Shops' prices may be favorable, inaccessible areas or features might become available, and rare quests and items might be exposed. Shops are certainly a staple in this sort of game. Many games have buying options and some also have selling options. Mystic Searches has both of these and allows you to both purchase with the currency Zen, but also sell items and materials. Since you can sell common materials, you can farm these materials to slowly earn money for expensive items. Another feature of the shops in Mystic Searches is a trading system. In fact, a few shops only have trading options. When engaged in a trade, the merchant has special items that aren't necessarily available to purchase. What is available changes over time and can also be affected by your lore points within that area. When you invoke a trade, you can select up to 4 items from your inventory or from your material list to put on the table. If the merchant is happy with the terms of the trade, you'll get the item. If the items you have offered don't match the merchant's perceived value of this item, he'll decline the trade. In creating what feels like a living, breathing world, Mystic Searches features a day-night cycle with specific periods of dawn and dusk as well. Generally, you might find areas to be slightly different depending on whether it's day or night, different NPCs, different monsters, different access to structures. There are even a few instances where dawn and dusk are especially significant. In the status menu, you can keep track of how many days you've been adventuring. Beyond the day-night cycle, Mystic Searches also has weather patterns. Some areas are constantly bombarded with inclement weather. Others may see random rain, thunderstorms, snow, or some other biome-specific weather feature. These weather conditions are more than just aesthetic, though. They can have an effect on your abilities, your vulnerabilities, status effects, and on what monsters spawn. Some areas are also difficult to traverse due to the features of the biome. There are frigid mountains, arid deserts, poisonous swamps, etc. This can give the player detrimental status elements if he doesn't have the proper things equipped. Not to mention, sometimes monsters can inflict status ailments too. When you're inflicted with an ailment, your life bar will give an indication. For instance, when poisoned, instead of hearts, you'll see that your health matter has become small potion icons. And the poison status will slowly eat away at your health and cause you to move more slowly. There are items, relics, song spells, and summons that can heal status ailments or prevent them altogether. You can keep track of the monsters you battle throughout the game. When you first defeat a particular type of monster, it will appear in your bestiary. In some cases, unlocking certain monsters or combinations of monsters can change NPCs' perceptions of you and what they say. The magic of the mystics has been corrupted, turning them into gross abominations, generally the antithesis of the magic over which they're custodians. Each mystic boss battle is a multi-tiered event. Where possible, the mechanics of the battle itself tie in with the narrative or the themes of an area. For instance, Drona, who presides over entropy from her labyrinth of chaos, casts her magic dice, their outcome recursively deciding the battle behavior. When she's the strongest, when she's vulnerable. When battling Mystic Cyrene, who controls causality, you'll have to chase her across time as it spins out of control. Or Mystic Casali, who controls sentience, who literally brings the cave to life. There are 8 of these oversized, multi-phased, narratively significant bosses. This is a game with what feels like a living world, featuring so much to do and so much to explore and so much to find. Once beyond the intro, much of the gameplay is non-linear, and you're encouraged to go back to areas already explored to find new things. This can get potentially complicated. So to help, you have access to a map. At the start, you'll notice that your map features only a small area of the world charted. In order to unlock more of the map, you have to find cartographers who will help you fill in other regions. In general, the order in which you can find these cartographers and the areas they unlock suggest a logical path through the narrative in the game, but you do not need a region to be unlocked in order to freely travel to it. You're free to go rogue and just explore. On the map, you can see your relative position. Another thing you'll notice is a series of magic fast travel locations. For these to work, you'll need to have that region of the map unlocked, and you'll need to discover the fast travel point in that region. Once you've done both things, it will be unlocked on your list, and you can use the system to travel great distances instantly. There's so much to do and to keep track of: the mainline quests to restore sanity to the mystics, summoning new auras, finding relics, finding crystals, finding fast travel points, collecting lore, learning new songs. It's a compelling world, but with a lot to keep track of, and much of it is quest-based. That's why there's a quest system on the map screen as well. When an NPC gives you a new quest, it appears in a new entry in your quest catalog. When you select an unlocked quest in the quest catalog, the relevant location will appear on the map. It might be the mission's point of origin and return, or a general destination. When a mission is completed, it shows it's completed in your quest log. So if you get sidetracked, there's an easy system to remember where you were going and what you were doing. That doesn't mean that the quest will always point you to the exact screen where the quest will terminate. or that just showing up to that area will complete the mission, but it at least gives you some direction in terms of things that are still left to be accomplished. While the world has to be compressed into what fits in an NES cartridge, a very broad game bible helps keep track of the nuances of each biome. Each region has been fully realized, each race narratively explored. Important characters are fleshed out, monsters are thoroughly conceptualized. Passages of lore have been written and novelized, comic adaptations have been created. Each mystic has an interleaved story, each of the unlockable summons has a significant history in all this. It all ties together into one cohesive experience, and it might seem gratuitous to do all this, to then have to squeeze it down into a NES game, but that's what allows us to create such a compelling narrative inside of a NES game, is having this whole world sort of thought out beforehand. Much of this supplemental material won't fit on a NES cartridge, but it will be included in a Switch version of Mystic Searches. This project has been greenlit for the popular Nintendo console, and we've been testing it in parallel on our development Switch unit. Now, I realize that some of you have been waiting a long time for this release. It is incredibly humbling to have future players of this game that demonstrate such passion that it manifests as that frustration. I know patience hasn't always been easy, but I hope this quells any worry that the project has gone neglected. I hope that seeing all that is developing demonstrates my continued devotion and why, as effectively a one-man team, development is taking so long. The delay has only ever been in service of making a cooler experience for you to enjoy. The game has been with me through marriage, the birth of 2 children, 2 massive career changes, a 1,500-mile move, multiple hurricanes, a global pandemic, the death of friends and family members. Trust me, I understand the frustration of its long development cycle. No one wants it to be in your hands more than me. It's been an exhausting journey, but I'm working every day to create something that pays off on the ambition of that 8-year-old kid in me. And I hope that you're eager to jump into this new NES fantasy adventure. I'm planning to reveal Mystic Searches for the first time at this year's Midwest Gaming Classic. I want to cordially invite everyone to come be among the very first people to ever play it. For those who want to keep up to date, you can get email notifications about release information at mysticsearches.com. Thank you for the continued support in this project, and here's to an amazing 2023.